Know that out of over 3,000 billionaires on the Forbes 2025 list, only 23 were black? That's less than 1%. And yet the top 8 black men who cracked that wall did it from starting points so ridiculous and so seemingly impossible that their stories make every trust fund billionaire origin story sound boring. From sleeping in cars to growing up in housing projects, these are the 8 richest black men in America. Stick around, because the wealth scale at the #1 spot will blow your mind. Number 8. Tope Awotona, approximately $1.4 billion. Tope Awotona is a name that most people blank on, which is exactly why we're starting here, because this man might have the most quietly unhinged origin story on this entire list. Awotona was born in Lagos, Nigeria in 1981, and when he was 12 years old, his father was shot and killed in a carjacking. At 15, he moved to Atlanta essentially alone, navigating a new country, a new culture, and a level of grief that would have stopped most people dead in their tracks. He enrolled at the University of Georgia, tried computer science, switched to business, graduated, got into tech sales, and then spent the next several years launching startup after startup that went absolutely nowhere. He launched and failed with 3 startups, back to back to back, with each one quietly flatlining while he went back to his sales job and tried to figure out where the actual opportunity was hiding. Turns out it was hiding in the most boring corner of professional life imaginable: scheduling meetings. Specifically, the insane email chain that 2 fully grown adults somehow need 3 days to complete just to find a 30-minute window. Back and forth. Does Tuesday work? Oh no, Tuesday's bad. How about Thursday? It's as if they're negotiating the end of a war. Awotona decided to just fix that very issue. In 2013, he cashed in his entire 401k, liquidated his savings, scraped together $200,000, and built Calendly, a scheduling tool so clean and obvious that the real mystery is why nobody built it a decade earlier. He bootstrapped it for years without a single dollar of venture capital, just quiet, organic word of mouth spreading through sales teams and professionals who found it and immediately forwarded it to everyone they worked with. Then, in 2021, the dam broke. Calendly raised $350 million at a $3 billion valuation, and Awotona, who'd held majority ownership the whole time and was still sitting in the CEO chair, found himself a billionaire. The software now runs inside Fortune 500 workflows, healthcare systems, and the laptops of basically every high-functioning professional who values their time and their sanity. He lives in Atlanta, keeps a genuinely low profile, and lets the product do all the talking. From Lagos to billionaire on the back of a calendar app. The audacity of that is almost poetic. Number 7. LeBron James, approximately $1.2 billion. In 2022, LeBron James became the first active NBA player in history to hit $1 billion in net worth while still suiting up. Still lacing sneakers, still playing, already 10 figures. And the part that really messes with your brain when you sit with it is that basketball, the thing that made him the most famous athlete on the planet, accounts for maybe a third of how he got there. He grew up in Akron, Ohio, raised by a single mother, Gloria, bouncing between neighborhoods and housing situations that most people would describe as genuinely unstable. When he was in 8th grade, a youth football coach named Frank Walker literally took him in for a year, gave him structure, a bed, a place to land. From that, somehow, came the greatest NBA player of his generation. His career earnings on the court total over $500 million. That's the seed capital. Where it grew was Spring Hill Company, the media and production empire he built with his best friend Maverick Carter, which has content deals across Netflix and Disney and a valuation that's climbed into the hundreds of millions. His early Blaze Pizza investment of $1 million reportedly returned over $30 million before he exited. The Fenway Sports Group stake, which owns the Red Sox, Liverpool FC, and the Pittsburgh Penguins, was purchased at a valuation that has since appreciated significantly enough to anchor a serious portion of his balance sheet. And then there's the Nike deal that doesn't expire until 2046, structured not as a flat endorsement fee, but as equity participation in Jordan brand-adjacent revenue, meaning he gets paid long after the last game is played. Off the court, the I Promise School opened in Akron in 2018, a fully funded tuition-free public school for at-risk kids built and sustained by the LeBron James Family Foundation. His primary residence is a $37 million estate in Brentwood, California, with a Beverly Hills property layered on top. His private jet logs miles that would embarrass most commercial pilots. At one point, $2 billion and climbing while still active, LeBron isn't just a generational athlete. He's a case study in what happens when someone treats their career as startup capital instead of an endpoint. Number 6. Tyler Perry, approximately $1.4 billion. Next up is Tyler Perry, a household name in acting. But did you know that Tyler wrote his first play while living out of his car? Today, he owns a 330-acre film studio in Atlanta that is physically larger than Disney's lot in Burbank. That gap between those two facts is wild. But what's even wilder is how he closed it, because Perry didn't climb Hollywood's ladder. He looked at the ladder, decided the whole thing was rigged, and built a completely different building right next door. He was born Emmett Perry Jr. in New Orleans in 1969, raised in a household scarred by poverty and abuse severe enough that he legally changed his first name as an adult to separate himself from his father. His childhood was bad. He's spoken publicly about it, and we're not going to sensationalize it. Just know that the version of Tyler Perry who eventually wrote "I Know I've Been Changed" in 1992 did so specifically because writing was the only thing keeping him sane. He spent nearly 6 years pouring money into that play, staging it at small Atlanta venues, watching it fail repeatedly, sleeping in his car during the lean periods. Then one night in 1998, the audience showed up. Then they kept showing up. And before he ever made a movie, Perry had already sold over $100 million in stage play tickets to an audience Hollywood had completely written off. That audience became the foundation for the Madea franchise. 21 films, over $1 billion at the box office, with Perry pocketing roughly $290 million in personal fees and profit from that single franchise alone. But the money story is really about one decision he made early: ownership. While other creators were signing studio deals that traded their creative control for upfront cash, Perry insisted on writing, directing, producing, and financing his own work. When he finally went to Lionsgate, he put up half the budget himself and took half the profits. No one does that. Studios laughed at him for it. Then the checks came in and nobody was laughing anymore. In 2015, he purchased the former Fort McPherson Confederate military base in southwest Atlanta for $30 million, poured another $250 million into redevelopment, and turned it into Tyler Perry Studios. 12 sound stages, 50,000 square feet of permanent sets, including a full White House replica, a working 1950s diner, and a 16,000 square foot mansion. The Confederate Army trained on that same ground to keep black people enslaved. Perry owns it now. He noted the poetic justice himself and moved on. Netflix, Amazon, and Marvel all rent his facilities, meaning his studio generates serious revenue, even on days when Perry himself isn't filming a single frame. His deal with Viacom-CBS pays him $150 million annually for content he still owns 100% of. And his 25% equity stake in BET Plus is valued at around $50 million on its own. Tyler's real estate portfolio includes a 1,200-acre Atlanta estate with a private runway, an $18 million Beverly Hills mansion, properties in Jackson Hole and the Bahamas, and 2 Gulfstream private jets. Annual income between $200 and $250 million, mostly passive. The man built a closed-loop content ecosystem. He writes it, films it, owns the IP, and licenses it back to the platforms that need it. In an era when creators are still fighting for a seat at the table, Perry finished building his own table about 15 years ago and has been collecting rent on it ever since. Number 5. Magic Johnson, approximately $1.6 billion. There's a detail about Magic Johnson's early life that sets the tone for everything that follows. As a teenager in Lansing, Michigan, he had a job cleaning a 7-story office building. He'd clean the first 6 floors normally, but whenever he got to the 7th floor where the boss had his corner office, he'd sneak in, kick his feet up on the executive desk, and just sit there for a minute, living the vision before he had the means. He later said he grew up poor, but his dreams never were. Here's the financial reframe that makes Magic's story genuinely special. His entire NBA career, 13 seasons, 5 championships, 3 MVPs, one of the greatest point guards who ever lived, earned him approximately $40 million. His current net worth is $1.6 billion, up $400 million in a single year according to Forbes. That means he made 40 times more money after basketball than during it, and the gap is still widening. After his 1991 retirement following his HIV diagnosis, a moment the entire world interpreted as a death sentence, Magic did something almost nobody does when they're handed that kind of news. He immediately started thinking about ownership. Through Magic Johnson Enterprises, he identified a gap that corporate America kept stepping over. Underserved urban communities with real purchasing power and zero infrastructure to spend it in. He opened movie theaters in black neighborhoods that studios swore wouldn't perform. He partnered with Howard Schultz to build Starbucks locations in urban markets that the chain had written off as too risky. Every single location outperformed projections, and he eventually sold those 125 Starbucks franchises back to the company for an estimated $100 million profit. Magic wasn't just a business partner in those deals. He was the proof of concept that made corporate America finally look at communities they'd been ignoring for decades. But the real crown jewel of his portfolio isn't sports or coffee, it's insurance. His 60% controlling stake in Equitrust Life Insurance Company, which he acquired in 2015, now oversees over $27 billion in assets, up from $16 billion when he took over. That's an insurance company generating quiet, steady, compounding cash that most people scrolling past Magic's Instagram would never in a million years associate with the Showtime Lakers. He's also a co-owner of the LA Dodgers, the Washington Commanders, the LA Sparks, and LAFC, and co-founded JLC Infrastructure with a Spanish billionaire to help build the new JFK Airport terminal opening in 2030. This past summer, Magic spent time with his family on a 95-meter super yacht, rented from former Google chairman Eric Schmidt, complete with a 12-seat cinema, a pool, a sauna, and 42 video screens. The man who used to sneak into his boss's chair to imagine what power felt like ended up owning the building. Number 4. Jay-Z, approximately $2.5 billion. Born December 4, 1969 in Brooklyn's Marcy houses. By 9, he'd watched a murder from his window. By 12, he was in the streets. At 15, he shot his own older brother in the shoulder during a fight over stolen jewelry. His brother never pressed charges, and they've since reconciled. But Jay-Z has said in interviews that he's never fully forgiven himself for it. From that starting point, Sean Carter became hip-hop's first billionaire, and the architecture of exactly how he got there is more interesting than the number itself. The music made him famous. 14 studio albums, 25 Grammys, over 140 million records sold worldwide. That's the cultural foundation, but it's basically the opening monologue before the real story starts. In 2007, he sold Rocawear to Iconics for $204 million and kept the marketing rights, meaning Iconics got the brand name and Jay-Z got paid to associate with it indefinitely. In 2014, he publicly went after Cristal Champagne after their executive made dismissive comments about hip-hop in a magazine interview, announced a personal boycott, and then, instead of just switching bottles like a normal person, acquired Armand de Brignac outright and let his own lifestyle be the entire marketing budget. Ace of Spades didn't need an ad campaign. It needed to be in Jay-Z's hand in every photo from every club in every city for the next decade, and that's exactly what happened. In 2021, he sold 50% to LVMH at a $640 million valuation. In 2023, he sold a portion of his Douce Cognac stake to Bacardi in a deal valuing that brand at $3 billion. A transaction that reportedly put around $750 million in his pocket from a single liquor negotiation. Roc Nation manages artists including Rihanna, produces the Super Bowl halftime show through a landmark NFL partnership, and pulls in an estimated $100 million annually on its own. His real estate anchor is an $88 million Bel Air compound shared with Beyoncé alongside a $26 million Hamptons property with an art collection, Basquiat, Warhol, and others, appraised around $70 million. An early Uber check for $2 million reportedly became $70 million on exit. Annual passive income is estimated at $150 million, and he hasn't released a solo album since 2017. So the engine just runs on automation now. Now, before we move forward and get into the top 3 category, here's a cool announcement for you. We're offering exclusive memberships for our loyal subscribers, which include early access to exclusive content, loyalty badges in your name, and official shoutouts in our videos. Join Black Status as a channel member right now and become part of the inner circle. Let's build this community together. See you on the inside. Number 3. Michael Jordan. Approximately $3.5 billion. Quick math that should genuinely mess with you. Michael Jordan earned approximately $94 million during his entire 15-year NBA career. His net worth today is $3.5 billion. That means he made roughly 37 times more money after basketball than during it, which sounds impossible until you trace precisely how it happened. Born in Brooklyn in 1963, raised in Wilmington, North Carolina. The story about getting cut from the high school varsity team as a sophomore is real, and he has referenced that specific moment in more business speeches than championship rings, which tells you exactly how his brain is wired. 3 years at UNC, 3rd overall pick by the Bulls in 1984, 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs, the greatest who ever played. Career salary, $94 million. Now here's where the story pivots. When Nike came calling in 1984, Jordan pushed for a royalty structure instead of a flat endorsement fee, taking less guaranteed cash in exchange for a percentage of Jordan brand revenue every year in perpetuity. That single negotiation has now generated more than $2.35 billion in personal royalties, growing at roughly $350 million annually as Jordan brand continues to move over $6 billion worth of product for Nike. A 21-year-old rookie, at his first major contract negotiation, made a call that has so far outperformed his entire NBA salary by about 2,400%. There is no athletic deal in the history of professional sports that comes close to that return. And then there's the Hornets move. He bought majority control in 2010 for $275 million, became the first former NBA player to own a franchise outright, and sold his majority stake in 2023 at a $3 billion valuation, roughly a 1,000% return over 13 years, beating the S&P 500 comfortably over the same window. He retained a minority stake. He also co-owns NASCAR's 23XI Racing with Denny Hamlin, holds a DraftKings equity stake around $110 million, and owns real estate spanning a 56,000-square-foot Chicago compound and a private island resort in the Bahamas. Annual income still exceeds $300 million, almost entirely from Nike royalties alone. He hasn't played a professional basketball game since 2003, but the royalty structure just keeps compounding, completely on autopilot, every single year. Number 2. Robert F. Smith. Approximately $10.8 billion. Robert Frederick Smith was born December 1, 1962, in Denver, Colorado. His mother carried him as an infant to the March on Washington, the same day Dr. King gave the "I Have a Dream" speech. 60 years later, Smith was invited back to speak at the anniversary on that exact spot. That biographical arc alone is almost too cinematic to be real. But what happened in between those two moments is what actually belongs on this list. In high school, he applied for a Bell Labs internship that was listed for college students only. They said no. He called back every single week, politely and persistently, until they let him in anyway. That quality, systematic, unrattled, completely impervious to the word no, became the operating philosophy of his entire career. Chemical engineering from Cornell in 1985, 2 U.S. patents, an MBA from Columbia, years at Goldman Sachs advising tech companies on M&A transactions, watching from the advisor's seat while the actual owners got wealthy. In 2000, he took the other seat. He founded Vista Equity Partners in Austin, Texas, with a thesis built around one insight: buy underperforming enterprise software companies, fix them operationally, and hold them long enough for the compounding to do its thing. Vista now manages over $100 billion in assets. Its funds have delivered internal rates of return in the 30% range since inception, consistently placing in the top tier of global private equity performance. When Vista's portfolio holdings were aggregated in 2019, the firm ranked as the fourth largest enterprise software company in existence, sitting behind only Microsoft, Oracle, and SAP. Smith's personal net worth sits at $10.8 billion, with Forbes ranking him 88th in America. He married model Hope Dworacek in 2015, with John Legend performing at the reception. Their son is named Hendrix, and their other son is named Legend, which is either incredibly cool or unhinged depending on your perspective, but either way, it tracks for a man operating at this level. The number that defines his legacy, though, isn't $10.8 billion. It's $34 million. That's what he pledged on the spot during his 2019 Morehouse College commencement address to eliminate every dollar of student loan debt for every graduate in the room and their families. Unannounced, mid-speech, like it was something he'd been sitting on for a while and just decided to drop. No PR coordination, no press release. He just said it and meant it. He also became the first Black American to sign the Giving Pledge, committing to donate more than half his fortune over his lifetime, and was named chairman of Carnegie Hall, the first Black person to hold the role in the institution's entire history. Robert built a $100 billion machine, then used it to cancel a generation of debt. That's the range most people can't even comprehend. And now, it's time for our number one entry, the richest Black man in America. Number 1. David Steward, approximately $11.4 billion. Before we talk numbers, let's establish one thing that actually matters here. David Steward has a perfect 10 on Forbes' self-made score. Out of the 400 wealthiest Americans on the list, only 25 people have that. It means no inheritance, no family money, no connected network, and no shortcut at all. Just himself and whatever he could build from scratch. He was born July 2, 1951 in Chicago and raised in Clinton, Missouri, a small segregated town where his father worked as a mechanic, a janitor, and a garbage collector depending on the season, and where 7 kids shared a household that had very little margin for anything. Stewart graduated from Central Missouri State University in 1973 and spent the next decade and a half learning how large enterprises actually operate. Logistics roles at Missouri Pacific Railroad, sales at Wagner Electric, time at FedEx, absorbing how one of the most complex distribution systems in the world moves at scale. And then in 1990, with roughly $250,000 in personal savings and a level of confidence that, in retrospect, looks either visionary or borderline delusional, he co-founded Worldwide Technology in St. Louis. The early years nearly killed it. The company ran $3.5 million into debt. Stewart went months without paying himself, and then one morning, he walked out of his own office and watched a repo man drive away with his car from the parking lot. His car, from his own workplace. He went back inside and kept working, which honestly says everything you need to know about the man. The pivot that saved everything was recognizing that Fortune 100 companies and federal agencies were sitting on enormous technology infrastructure budgets with almost nobody serving them at the integration depth they actually needed. WWT positioned itself at that exact gap, not just selling hardware, but building and managing entire enterprise technology environments. And once the government and corporate contracts started coming in, they never stopped. Worldwide Technology now generates $20 billion in annual revenue, employs nearly 10,000 people, and counts over 80 of the Fortune 100 among its clients, including Cisco, Apple, NVIDIA, Verizon, and the U.S. federal government itself. The sectors WWT operates in AI infrastructure, cloud, cybersecurity, data analytics, automation, aren't just growth industries right now, they are the essential backbone of how the modern economy runs. Stewart didn't accidentally land in a hot space. He built critical infrastructure that the country now depends on, and he holds majority ownership of a private company that doesn't trade on any exchange, which means the $11.4 billion figure is probably conservative. He's faith-driven, famously understated, St. Louis-based, and has given tens of millions to education, health, and community development through the Stewart Family Foundation. No mega compound in Bel Air. No yacht spotted off the coast of Monaco. Just the largest Black-owned company in the United States, built by a man who watched his car get repossessed from his own parking lot and went back to his desk. That's number 1. And there you have it. 8 men with 8 completely different starting points who ended up becoming billionaires. If this story of how America's richest black men came into being, like the video and hit that subscribe button. Also, drop the story that hit hardest in the comments, and for more such interesting peeks into black wealth, take a look at black status.